following program has been pre-recorded, so please hold your calls.
Welcome to Conspiracies Against Wellness with your host, Janelle Elgaway.
And now, your host, Janelle Elgaway.
Good evening, and welcome to Conspiracies Against Wellness. My name is Janelle Elgaway. Tonight, Dr. Mark Isben is Call Nation's guest. If you have a question or comment for Dr. Isben, please call in at 415-915-2291 or call 1. You can also chat live with the audience on our YouTube channel, Conspiracies Against Wellness live stream. And now for tonight, welcome, Dr. Isben. How are you this evening?
Thanks, Janelle. I'm good. Let's start off with getting my name right. It's hard to do. It's okay. Ibsen, I-B-S-E-N.
Gotcha.
And I want to tell you a joke from high school. Back then, they called me Isben, has been, never will be.
Oh no.
Yeah. So it's an old joke. And it's Ibsen, as in the Danish and Norwegian author.
Ibsen. Okay, thank you so much. They called me Janelle Gouet. They put my first and last name together, so Janelle Gouet.
Yeah.
So I know, man, I can't wait to get into tonight's show because you have so much information and stuff to go over with. Can you please start out by telling me a little bit about yourself and your background?
So I've been an emergency physician for about 35 years. I graduated medical school in 1980 at Washington University. I did a family practice residency in Salt Lake City, and then I continued my western migration, went to California, and then back to Montana in 1991. I've been in Helena since 1996 when my daughter was an infant, and I practiced for about 12 years in the emergency department there. I'm still board certified in emergency medicine. Around 2010, I started an urgent care in Helena, and it was called Urgent Care Plus, and we were located next to a natural medicine clinic, and they were Natural Medicine Plus. So we formed kind of a parenthesis around patient care for people who were either concerned about their medical care or people who wanted to use natural medicine and couldn't. So we were complementary to each other. And that started in 2010, and it gave me the thrill of finally being somewhat of a family doctor. I loved it.
Okay. So when exactly did you get into pain management? And you told me when we spoke last you had a story. Could you tell your story a little bit?
I will, yes. So I'm an accidental pain management doctor. I don't consider myself to be a pain management doctor. I consider myself just to be a doctor. However, somewhere around 2011, right after starting my clinic, and we had a reputation for problem solving, people would come to my clinic who'd been dropped by their other doctor or so for example, Dr. Burkholder would have retired and Dr. Wampler, the younger partner, would not write pain medicine prescriptions for patients. So on Friday night, I'd see somebody who'd already seen their doctor that day, and they'd tell me, well, I'm going to be in withdrawal tomorrow. What do I do? And right then and there, I could see that as an ER doctor, I had been kicking the can of chronic pain down the road for years, and it's not appropriate to treat chronic pain in the ER. So now I found myself having a can kicked to me. And right at that moment, I decided I'm going to help this person not with their chronic pain, but with their acute withdrawal and the acute pain they're going to be suffering when they don't have any medicine tomorrow. So that was a choice I made. I'm glad I made that choice. I had no idea where it would take me. Certainly down a rabbit hole.
How many patients did you have that would come in that needed help with this?
It ended up, it sort of started as a trickle and ended up as a flood. So it's almost like a Rip Van Winkle story. Working in an ER in a hospital for 30 years, I really wasn't tuned into what was going on as an outpatient in outpatient medicine. So I was tuned in to the whole campaign that we should be treating pain better. The Pain is the Fifth Vital Sign program really started in hospitals and was promoted by the Joint Commission on Accreditation of Hospitals. And we were assessed on how well we treated pain. Fortunately, because I've had pain in many ways, I was aggressive with treating pain in the ER. I didn't see any benefit by letting people writhe and suffer in pain while we were trying to get their diagnosis established. I did a fair share of writhing and suffering myself with kidney stones, a ruptured Achilles tendon, and 2 back surgeries. So I had empathy for people in pain, but I also knew I couldn't solve people's chronic pain in that environment. So when people in pain came to me, I thought, I'm just a bridge. I'm an urgent care doctor. If you're out of your Prozac, I'm going to write you a prescription until you can find a new doctor to write it for you. We do that in urgent care and emergency medicine all the time. So bridging somebody with their pain medication didn't seem like a big deal to me, and it seemed like the right, compassionate, Hippocratic thing to do for these people. I started off with maybe 5 or 10 patients in that situation. I ended up with about 150 people I was following, all of these, which I call pain refugees. These are people who've been abandoned by their doctor. They'd had a false positive or false negative urine test, and some of them may have been criminals. And all of them were coming to me to get the help that I offered. And my model was to offer a conversation, deep listening, the appropriate testing and following for patients, and then to acknowledge that the gilded cage of pain management is over and people have to get off their opiates, not because opiates are bad, but because they're clearly going away. I could see that in 2012, 2013. I had no idea it was going to get as bad as it is today. But every patient that was interested in getting off their opiates were able, 80% of them were able to do so, and I was able to help them, and that's very gratifying. 20% of those patients couldn't get off those opiates, and they're the ones that are stuck.
Now, in your professional opinion, are people able to live and have any type of quality of life without their pain medications, or is there a certain group of people that, that's the only way that they can have any type of quality of life?
Well, in my professional opinion, it goes both ways. Patients who've come to me and said to me, I am tired of these opiates. I want to get off them. I'm tired of begging for my pills. I'm tired of being treated as a second-class citizen. I'm tired of the effects on me. My family tells me I'm irritable on these pain medicines. And if people want to come off them, they can do it if they're committed to it. And I'm committed to helping them. There's another cadre of patients that I tried to wean them off, and they failed, and I failed to get them off. And for those patients, if you take pain medicine away from people who feel that they strongly need it, they feel betrayed, and it is a horrible thing to do to somebody.
Right. So how many patients do you currently see?
Well, my whole practice has changed. My clinic actually closed December of 2015, so it's just mothballed. It's just sitting there.
Why did it close?
Every time I go in there. It closed because of all the controversy around myself and my practice and my license and opiates and cannabis and the hostile regulatory environment in Montana, and the fact that Dr. Christensen was raided and then tried and then convicted of manslaughter for treating his patients with opiates. So it's a complicated story. Takes a little while to tell it. but we closed in 2015. So now I basically see patients for cannabis, and I travel around the state of Montana and facilitate people getting their cannabis recommendations. And I see probably about 100 patients a week.
What happened to, I mean, you see some patients. What happened to their patients that were needing opioids or didn't want to change off of that? What happened to them?
So I was carrying about 150 patients, and in 2015, in September, Dr. Chris Christensen was another doctor in the state. He was arrested and charged with 400 felonies for his pain management care. These were 11 patients. 2 of whom died. Both of those were overdoses. And 9 patients had the other 398 felonies, which means they charged him with 36.7 felonies per patient. Basically, they charged him with 1 felony for every prescription he wrote for these patients over a period of 3 to 5 years. So, you know, one prescription a month over 5 years is 60 prescriptions. That'd be 60 felonies. Now, I ask you, if I stabbed you 30 times, would I be charged with 1 count of murder or 30? I mean, it's prosecutorial overreach, and it contaminated the jury pool, in my opinion. But anyway, when that happened, I was very clear that it's just too dangerous to continue to see lots of pain medicine patients. So at that point, I panicked, and I said, I'm not seeing any more of these patients. I don't really want to be arrested. So,
did you give in your DEA license?
I still have my DEA license, yes.
Okay. Right.
The DEA came and visited me 5 different times. They visited me, and they said to me, Dr. Isben, you are risking your freedom and your license by seeing patients like these. And I said, patients like what? And they said, patients who might divert their pain medicine. And I said, well, isn't that everybody?
Right.
So they made their accusations to me quite vague. They never got more specific. I'm pretty sure there's an open investigation. You know, these terms are now quite familiar to everybody. I'm not a target of an investigation with them. I'm a subject of an investigation, and they haven't met with me in 3 years. But they did say to me, anytime they meet with me, they want my lawyer present, which is an indication, according to my lawyer, that they have an investigation.
Wow, I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
I wanted to know about, I asked you what happened to your patients, but how many of your patients that you saw have passed away or committed suicide or have died due to?
Let me go into a little bit more detail about the story.
Sure.
Yeah.
Please.
So I had 150 patients. I told them all I was stopping prescribing, and then 2 months later my clinic closed. And then about a month after that, my first patient suicide occurred. His name is Robert Mason. He came to one of the many hearings I had before the Board of Medicine, and we'll talk about that later if you like. And at that point, the Board of Medicine was getting ready to override a positive ruling I had from an administrative law judge, and they were getting ready to suspend my license. So I was pretty preoccupied. But Bob came to my hearing, and he did not look like the guy I knew. The guy I knew was a few years older than me. He kind of had a Long Island accent. He was dressed business casual, and we had great conversations about life and philosophy and the twists and turns of life. And the man I saw was 2 weeks off his opiates, and he looked like a ghost of himself. And he smelled like a campfire, and he looked like almost a homeless person. And they treated him that way at the Board of Medicine hearing. So 2 days after he was treated so shabbily, he killed himself with a gunshot wound to the head. When that happened to me, it became clear to me that even though I might have a license for 2 more weeks or 3 more weeks or 2 more months, that I was going to do my best to help people and to use the magic wand that I had for as long as I had it. So I took back about 9 or 10 of the sickest of the patients who could not get off opiates. And I continued to follow them until the fall of 2007 when Dr. Christensen was convicted of manslaughter and illegal distribution of dangerous drugs. And when he was convicted, it became clear to me that there's no way I could continue to prescribe any opiates to anybody in this state, that I couldn't help anybody if I went to prison. And so that amount of panic and terror had me take the rest of my patients. and invite them to find another doctor, and they'd all been scrambling to find another doctor and couldn't. So I'd been following them, and I told them I had to wean them, and they scattered to the winds.
Yes. Well, I've seen some of your videos.
One of those patients,
I posted one of them. Yeah.
Yeah. One of those patients killed himself a month later.
So sorry.
And it's like, oh my God.
How do you
horrible.
deal with that? Yeah. How do you personally deal with that? No, I mean, as a human being, but as a doctor too. How have you dealt with this?
Well, it feels like being in a lifeboat 100 yards from the Titanic while you're still hearing the screaming, and knowing that you can't go back. And it's terrible. It's poignant. I'm designed to help people. I'm angry and I'm frustrated, and I have a terrible case of PTSD. So I go to my therapist, and we do EMDR and talk, and I weep, and I'm trying to process it, but it's been challenging.
Yeah, I can't even imagine.
I'm grateful that I'm not in prison. I mean, if the DEA takes out one doctor every 2 weeks these days, so those federal investigations are very much more challenging and difficult than me surviving a state license investigation. So in that way, I've been lucky. But watching my patients die, I think I've lost 6 patients in the last 2 years who've lost access to me or my care or their pain management, and that's just agonizing. I mean, if a cruise ship lost 6 patients from falling overboard, somebody would do something. And it seems like thankfully, here's a very weird feeling. I find out a patient has killed themselves, and then I have the weird feeling of, well, how did they kill themselves? And somebody tells me that they shot themselves, and I go, well, at least they didn't die on my pills. And it's like I'm certain if any of my patients overdosed on pills I gave them, I would be in prison. Right. But ironically, 6 of these patients who are dead, they've killed themselves, but I'm not in prison because they didn't kill themselves with the medicine I gave them. That is just disgusting. Well, one thing is they don't, because I don't think they have enough to do it. One,
right, and then the other thing is like, I mean, I know a lot of people that have plans, including myself, that I have a plan if something goes, just because I don't want to suffer certain ways. But I would never do it through pills because I wouldn't want my doctor to go through anything. Although, I mean, again, it's really hard to get pills if so.
I used to do it. When I was seeing my patients, I would tell them, if you overdose on these pills, you're not only killing you, you're killing me.
Oh, yeah. Yes. And I think everybody's aware of that.
My patients understood that. I think they understood that, and they thankfully protected me, and I'm grateful for that.
Yeah.
Not only that, but my patients came by the hundreds to my hearings, and they protected me there too. So I love my patients. I'm loyal to them. I'm closer to my patients than most doctors get. But this kind of threat puts you on a team that you don't really want to be on. And this is the team of how many people can we save? And and I feel like I've failed in sort of saving the other 100,000 starfish on the beach. I've thrown a few back in, but it's overwhelming.
I was hoping you were going to talk about the starfish. I like that analogy.
I really think that I can throw as many back as I can, and everybody deserves to have the respect of a listening ear and a caring, compassionate physician who does the right thing for this individual person. But anymore, the exam room is crowded by regulators and law enforcement and insurance companies and the DEA, and it's so crowded, doctors don't feel free or safe to do the right thing for each individual patient. And it makes no sense to take people who are stable on a proven therapy and say, oh, it's too risky for you, we're going to have to take you down. And the CDC guidelines don't call for that. It's basically the CDC guidelines are an excuse for doctors who are terrified to take their patients off their medicines. And I get it. I did that too. I retired. I had to.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's the thing too. I mean, these guidelines were just supposed to be guidelines. They weren't supposed to be law. and it was for primary care doctors with acute situations, not, people that have had this long term. And it's like they forgot us. That's another thing too. Like, I know sometimes people get really upset with the doctors, but I've told so many people, and I'm a broken record about it, we have to protect our doctors because it's us and it's us and you guys, we're both in this. And I understand, why you guys are afraid of it, because you'll lose everything. We cannot blame you, any doctor that does not want to continue doing this. And because you guys are just an end thing of what's going to happen. You're a symptom of what's actually really happening.
Here's what's happened for doctors. I mean, doctors used to be entrepreneurs. We looked up to them. It was Marcus Welby, Dr. Kildare, all that sort of thing. Doctors are mostly employees now. But it's not legal for doctors to form a union. They never could anyway. It'd be like herding cats. But doctors, my analogy is doctors are now like teachers. And we're service professionals that put everything on the line. And yes, we buy pencils for our students and all that same sort of thing that teachers do. But we do not have a teachers union, and we do not have any protection from people who go after our license. And so we are sitting ducks for bureaucrats and regulators and law enforcement people who want to make a name for themselves and put a feather in their cap saying we've saved the people of Montana from a bad doctor. Well, I have this to say about that. The Board of Medicine said I was endangering the people of Montana. None of my patients died from any overdoses. 6 of them are dead because they lost access to me and my care. So who's the danger to the people in Montana?
Right. It's the government, It's the people, the lawmakers right now. That's how I think
it's so. Isn't it so easy to point fingers? It really is, because we're living in a finger pointing time of our culture. But just as soon as the people of our culture and our co-citizens realize the folly of equating pain management with facilitating addiction, that's just folly, and there's no data for it. It's just strictly emotional reactions based on overreaction by legislators or the physicians for the responsible opiate prescribing who've lied to the rest of the culture, or the American Society of Interventional Pain Physicians who've been putting fake news in the medical literature for the last 10 years, saying that opiates don't work, and that's all just lies. And all of these lies have conspired against the wellness of the people who had stable medical programs and that have now been taken off of those stable medical programs. It would be like saying, well, we've got a shortage of insulin. We're not going to give you your 70 units of insulin a day. We're only going to give you 30, and, you'll have to diet the rest of the way. Or, too bad for you, there's not enough insulin. Or insulin harms people, so we're not going to give it anymore. It's like saying car crashes have skyrocketed since 1905. Well, of course they have. Things have changed.
Yeah.
But we
I don't know why we're pointing. I don't know why we point fingers now anyway, because all that's doing is it's causing stuff that there's nothing we can do about. I think what we really need to do about is focus on right now and moving forward, and working with patients and working with doctors and trying our best to see, what solutions we can come up with. I think that's where we need to be.
You're right. Here's what's happening right now. I went to a funeral today of another patient who killed herself 4 days ago.
Yeah.
And
Jennifer, correct?
Yes, Jennifer was a patient of mine. I followed her till 2015 when I cut everybody loose. She ended up hooking in with Dr. Tennant, thank God, along with about 10 other people from Montana who've been going to California to see Dr. Forrest Tennant for the last several years because they can't find anyone to prescribe their medicines for them. And each one of these patients turns out to be an ultra-rapid metabolizer of opiates, so they take scary high doses of opiates. And when I first saw how high these doses were, they were scary to me until – and some of these patients actually were like father-son or mother-daughter kind of combinations, and I thought, are these people in business to get pills from me so they can go sell them? And then I did just a little bit of research. I'm no rocket scientist. I did a little bit of research and found out that, guess what runs in families? Genetic abnormalities in opiate metabolism. And of course, fibromyalgia runs in families. Childhood trauma runs in families. Alcoholism, all those kind of things run in families. And you put it together, and you realize that, oh my God, these people need high doses of opiates, not because they're selling them, but because they metabolize them rapidly.
Right. And it happens with so many.
It really does. And maybe in some ways, that's induced some ways by either the pain that people have. But when people say that, oh, you should be on a much lower dose of opiates, and we can take you down, and we can get you to we can do a reset. One of the pain management groups in Montana puts people on what they call it a vacation. Jesus, it's like prison would be a vacation. A vacation from your opiates so that your whole system will reset, and then you can use the lower doses. It's like, well, great. Okay, you have a vacation. Let's put some bamboo sticks under your fingernails for about a week, and then see how you like it. I mean, this is torture to people, and torturing other human beings. I mean, the World Health Organization is against it. The United Nations is against it. Our entire culture is against torture, and yet here these people are being passively tortured by people who are just afraid. And you can tell by the tone of my voice, I'm angry about it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely understand. Do you mind if we take a quick call here? We have a few people calling in. Okay, all right. Caller from area code 218. What's your name and where are you from?
Oh, hello. Heather Ramsdell, Aurora, Minnesota. Hi. Hello.
Hi.
I don't know if Dr. Tennant's there. Hi, Dr. Tennant. Oh, just, I don't know, questions or comments. Just, I'm really disgusted with the whole thing that's going on as far as, the opioid being absorbed incorrectly. I had gastric bypass surgery. That's something that's not taken into consideration. And, I was listening. I just got on and was briefly hearing some of the things that were being said and just shaking my head. And vacation with the bamboo sticks, and for sure. I mean, they just don't understand at all. Unbelievable. Just unbelievable.
Well,
I mean,
you
it feels
honor me
like
by calling
nails.
me Dr. Tennant.
Oh, well, I know it's Dr. Ibsen, isn't it?
Yeah. It's okay.
I think it said at the beginning, Dr. Tennant, he's my hero.
Yeah.
He saved my life. He saved my life, truly.
Thank God for him.
Yes. Yeah, oh, man. And thank God for you, too. But, yes, I just don't know what to say. I'm just so upset. What do? You sign so many things to try and help, and what do you do? And like you said, the World Health Organization is against it, and when do they get involved? I mean, how do you get the World Health Organization involved in something like this? I mean, all of us just... And I did a video, and I thought about it, and I thought, oh, man, now I'm going to have a target on my back. It's like you feel like it's just horrible.
Right.
Just to be out of pain, horrendous, death-defying pain,
Well,
Heather,
I never knew such pain existed.
I'd like to respond to that if I could. I think what you asked it's a brilliant and poignant question. What do you do when you're terrorized? And
that is right. I feel terrorized. Mm-hmm.
And in my opinion, this pain's a fucking terrorist. And people who aren't in pain can't understand how terrorizing it can be. They kind of think you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps and all that sort of thing, and that's true. People can pull themselves up by their bootstraps with pain levels of 3, 4, 5, but not pain levels of 8. And it just sucks the life out of people. And I didn't know this until I started with patients. And my patient Tanya, she got hit by a car when she was 4. She's had CRPS and back pain, and she's been on high-dose opiates most of her life. And she's never out of pain. And when she came to me on high doses from Dr. Christensen, I thought, well, this is crazy. I'm going to take you off of this. And I started to wean her. And within 2 months, she'd lost 20 pounds. She weighed like 85 pounds, and she was dying before my eyes. And this is at the time when the DEA was lurking at my door, and I called them up, and I said, I have this patient. I've taken her off this methadone that you don't want anybody to have, and she's dying. What do I do? And guess what they said? They said, well, we're not doctors. We can't tell you what to do. And it's exactly right. They can tell me what I can't do, but they can't tell me what I can do. And in that patient, it was clear to me that the thing to do was to restart her opiates because she'd been destabilized out of fear and ignorance, my own ignorance. I just didn't know enough. And I got real interested with this patient who's dying before my eyes. I got interested right away. I went to Dr. Tennant's classes, and I started to learn about chronic pain because I had to defend myself from these regulatory attacks, and it was easy to do. The science is a nothing burger. There is all you've got to do is see your patient right in front of you dying from coming off their medicines and say, well, I know what to do. I'm going to put her back on her medicine. Right. And each patient is an example of the scientific model where you create a hypothesis, you do a trial, and you find out what's working and what's not. And it was clear to me in that patient it wasn't working for her to come off her opiates, and I put her back on them, and she did well until I quit in 2017. And she's not doing well today, and I feel terrible about it. But I can't help anybody from prison, and that's what I've told my patients. I have to, until something changes in the state of Montana that changes this establishment of a standard of care by the jury in Hamilton that convicted Dr. Christensen. I mean, no one has come out with any regulatory reassurance for any doctor in Montana since that happened, and it's basically every doctor in this state is completely terrified.
Yeah. Heather, thank you so much for calling.
Heather, what I also would tell my patients, and I think this is an important thing for you and everyone else who's struggling with this, we have to talk about how suicidal we all are. We have to acknowledge that we're suicidal, that we have plans. That's not encouraging people. But what I said to most of my patients, if you're not suicidal, you're not paying attention. Of course you're suicidal. Of course you're desperate. Of course you feel betrayed by not only the medical community now, but your culture, your legislators who aren't listening, the media that's jumped on the wrong bandwagon, and how politically hot potato this is. It's like the new third rail of politics. Politicians won't deal with this. And it's like people feel like they're completely alone. And it's conversations like these that at least help our compatriots to know that there's somebody that cares, there's somebody that'll stand by them, at least if it's just emotional. And there's some other ways to invent a way to get your pain down. And Dr. Tennant was working on great protocols till he got interrupted by a raid by the DEA.
Right. Heather, thank you so much for calling in. We have another caller from area code 267. What's your name and where are you from?
My name is Rita Nixon.
Hi, Rita.
Hi. I'm from Pennsylvania, Philadelphia area.
Okay, Rita. What's your question?
My question, actually, it's more of a comment, and actually, like, even I have 2 children with sickle cell disease, and this opioid situation has impacted them in a very horrible way.
Yes.
It's impacted them in, like, going to emergency rooms. They're not getting the medication that they need. It's actually, it's like it's been used as a way to torture. Mm-hmm. This is how I feel as a parent. My children are all adult, but they're still my children, and I feel like my children are being tortured. And I mean, like, we have doctors that are using this opioid situation
epidemic
to literally bully and torture patients with sickle cell disease. The only symptom of that disease is pain, and the pain medication is necessary in the treatment so that they can have a quality of life. And so, whereas it's impacting my family in a different way. This opioid situation is impacting my family and many, many, many other families, patients with sickle cell disease. It's impacting them in another way where there are healthcare professionals that have issues. I can go into another, like, I can say it in another way, but I'm trying as a parent, and my children, we have tried to not use the term racism in the treatment that they are receiving from certain physicians, but actually that's the only word that is appropriate. So, I mean, it's like we have healthcare professionals that are using the opioid epidemic against these patients, and they're being mistreated. Medications are not being given in the emergency rooms, and it's like we're seeing patients that have this disease. They have no quality of life. Some of the doctors are using excuses that the DEA is saying that they can't prescribe these medications, that they're not, they have to stop giving them to the patients in high doses. And
I got it, Rita.
It has been
terrible.
A way of
your children are being doubly conspired against in terms of racism and what I would call painism. And the unfortunate thing with sickle cell anemia is that the bone pain of sickle cell is not visible. There's no test for it. You have to take someone's word for it, and no one's taking anybody's word anymore. Doctors are now because doctors are policed, doctors are being asked to be policemen instead of compassionate healers, and you can't be both. My only recommendation for you is to continue to advocate and good hydration is the way to treat a sickle crisis, an IV therapy, but morphine's useful for that. And there's a shortage of even IV antibiotics now for hospitals. They can't get enough because of quotas placed by the DEA and FDA. I would like to say that since you're in Pennsylvania and there's a new cannabis program there, that there might be some help with some of the chronic pain from sickle cell with cannabis. And so I invite you to look into that and the other alternatives for pain, such as kratom or poppy seed tea or wild lettuce, and all these other things that people are now becoming interested in as alternatives to opiates because nobody's able to get them. And I just want to apologize to you on behalf of the medical profession and on behalf of my fellow emergency physicians who have been browbeaten into submission in order to just try and keep their jobs so they wouldn't get fired. The threat is huge. And my only other invitation to you is to turn on your phone and turn on the video and video your interactions when one of your kids goes to the ER with a sickle crisis. It deserves to be on TV how they were being treated. And in America these days, if it's not on video, it didn't happen.
Yeah,
so good
that's
luck
a great
to you.
suggestion.
I'm so sorry.
Rita, thank you so much for calling in. Caller from area code 847. What's your name and where are you from? No. Hi, caller from 847. What's your name and where are you from? Hello. Okay.
Looks like we answered their question.
Yeah. What about caller from 262? What's your name and where are you from?
Hi, Janelle. Hi, Dr. Ibsen. I'm Dave from Wisconsin. Hi.
Hi, Dave.
Dave.
What's your question?
From Wisconsin. Dr. Ibsen, you've seen these DEA agents face to face. Now, they're messengers, but did you try to talk to them? Did you explain what was going on? Was there anyone there qualified to listen and turn away after the explanation? Were any of them compassionate? That's all. Thank you. Thanks, Janelle.
That's a great question, Dave.
Yep.
Thank you. I think, I want to demonize the DEA just like they're demonizing me, and they are people trying to do a job, and they do want to help with this perceived idea that the rise in prescriptions from doctors has led to a heroin epidemic. Unfortunately, it's a false pretense, and I didn't ask them about those things or argue politics or even science with the DEA agents because they have so much control over outcomes. So when they came to visit me, it was sort of like a visit from the mafia. In the movies, the mafia guy comes and says, you give us a couple $1,000 a month and maybe your business doesn't burn down. You know what I'm saying? And it's vague like that. They're just intimating that, well, you shouldn't really be prescribing all these medicines to all these people because you could go to jail. And, they sound really kind and like they're interested in me preserving my freedom. But they just don't have the training. It's sort of like having a fifth grader evaluate a graduate student on the quality of their paper. I mean, they just don't have the background to make these decisions. Back in 2004, I think, the first time this technique was used with doctors, with Dr. Billy Hurwitz, and essentially the DEA reinterpreted the Controlled Substance Act. And they basically said that we're no longer going to let doctors decide who deserves pain medicine. We're going to say that if doctors prescribe too much, then they haven't been prescribing appropriately. And that misinterpretation of the Controlled Substance Act has left every doctor vulnerable because if they say you're using too much, then they're basically saying you're distributing dangerous drugs, just like a corner drug dealer, and it's impossible to fight that argument. So they're caught up in the same. It would be like in Germany, people caught up in the fascist Nazi regime. I'm sure there were there were people there that were just going along with it because they had to keep their job, or they were they couldn't really keep their integrity and their job. And I feel sorry for the DEA agents who are operating in this way. So, but they could resign, or they could decide to go after methamphetamine. What's happened is they're just going after the highest prescriber in every state, and they take that doctor out, and then guess what? There's a new higher prescriber, so they're going after that one. So they're misusing data. The DEA agent that did the raid on Dr. Tennant had 13 weeks of training.
Wow.
Yeah, 13 weeks.
Wow.
Dr. Tennant's been a pain management specialist for 45 years. And, she wrote in this search warrant how by her training, she's absolutely certain that Dr. Tennant is a drug dealer and that his patients are selling their pills and they're giving him kickbacks with money. And, none of that happened. Doesn't matter. Wow. That's how those guys are trained. And until we go after that, either legislatively, in the courts, or through the media, and disabuse them of these mythologies, they're going to continue to behave as if they're saving the world from bad doctors.
Yeah. I just wanted to say something quickly, and thank you, Dave, for the question. We have about 10 calls coming in right now, and we will get to you, so just please hold on, and I just want to let you know, too, Dr. Isben.
I'll stay on to the last questions answered.
Great. Okay, well, caller from area code 309. What's your name and where are you from?
Hey, Janelle. This is Nancy from Normal, Illinois, and it ain't normal here.
Hi, Nancy. What's your question?
Hey, great job, by the way, in Washington. I wanted to say that.
Thank you.
And, Doc, I am so sorry you're having to deal with this. I've had RSD for 21 years, and in 2006, 2005, 2006, I saw this day coming, and it was pretty obvious then. Everybody thought I was crazy. Now, today I'm sitting here after, on July 12th, I had total hip reconstruction. August 30th, I was involved in a serious motor vehicle accident going to the doctors. On January 3rd, my pain doctor decided that I lived too far away because it was a 2-hour drive, and he took me off my 4 milligrams of Dilaudid 4 times a day, down, and kicked me out of the clinic after signing a thing saying that they would not whatsoever, that clinic would not abruptly stop my opiates.
Right.
So sorry.
Now, fast forward, I get to another doctor, another pain clinic, willing to come down to like slowly taper down, and he took me from 4 milligrams of Dilaudid 4 times a day down to 10 milligrams of Norco once a day within 60 days. And then proceeded to do 4 epidural shots on top of that.
Ka-ching, ka-ching.
Yeah, this has become a money game. Now, see, the first doctor that on January 3rd, when I refused to do a spinal cord stimulator, and I refused to put rods in my spine, and Medicare refused to pay for 2 drug tests, it hit him in the pocketbook. And I called him on it. And it's actually in my documentations of my hospital notes. Then, you know,
I did not.
Let me respond to that. That's just a tragedy.
Yeah.
And I want to respond to that from the standpoint of I'm going to ask you to you're angry at your doctor, and it's like we're caught in the middle. I'm not. My doctor. Somebody talked to that doctor, and he broke a commitment with you. He betrayed you. But it's really the system that's betraying you. And what you said is very, very poignant in that they're offering you shots, and if you refuse them, they're going to discharge you because you must be just a drug seeker. And this has taken over pain management. Now, my question for everyone who's listening is, what is the condition of most patients that an anesthesiologist sees during their residency? They're asleep. Anesthesiology residents learn how to put people to sleep so that they can have a good surgical experience. In the days before anesthesia, that was horrible and bloody, and the best surgeons were the ones that could operate within 90 seconds. But now we have anesthesia that you could put people to sleep with, and that's a great thing. But anesthesiologists are expanding into pain management, and they don't have necessarily a skill set for listening to patients. And clearly, if particularly if you're disabled and you're getting Medicare and your doctor's charging $150 for your visit and you're going to collect $25 for it, it's a money loser to continue to see people that you're just writing prescriptions for. And so they have a production-based model, and they have to do more procedures. And part of this crazy conspiracy is that the specialists in anesthesia, the American Society for Interventional Pain Physicians, are some of the culprits here because they've managed to lobby to get these restrictions on opiates involved. So the opiates are restricted, therefore the procedural doctors get to do more procedures. And God save the person who's in palliative care. I mean, palliative means there's no more procedures that are going to help you. And most people reach an end stage. And it's just horrible that we can't treat the end stage of pain in the same way that we treat the end stage of heart disease or diabetes or any other medical illness. Yeah. And the problem with having non-cancer pain, if I may say so, is that you're not dying.
Right.
And so
you're going to be around for a long time.
Right. You got to figure out how you're going to survive 30 years. And I'm sure that's what happened to Jennifer, my patient, who was only 41 years old with a 12-year-old son, and she killed herself because she could not face a future of this kind of agony. And it's the future that you live into that creates your current experience. And that is where we're letting people down, I think. It's like, come on, stop this. Yeah. This is insanity. I don't know how to say it any stronger than that. And
you're absolutely right.
I'm so sorry for what you're going through. And I wish I could help every one of you.
Well, Nancy, thank you so much for calling in. Caller from area code 215. What's your name and where are you from?
Hi, I'm Dr. Bill Mangino. Can you hear me?
Yes. Hi, Dr. Mangino. How are you?
Okay, fine. Thanks.
Greetings, Doctor.
I have a couple of comments to for Dr. Ibsen, who, by the way, I saw you speak before on one of Janelle's videos, and I'm an anesthesiologist. I'm one of the leading experts in pain management in the world, and you hit the nail right on the head.
Thank you.
The interventionalists have everything to gain by making sure another opioid prescription is never issued in this country. It is purely a financial issue. They're greedy. I happen to be one of the founders of the American Society of Interventional Pain Physicians with Dr. Manchakanti, whose name I'm sure you probably know. They're down in Kentucky. They're great guys. They're excellent doctors. Interventional procedures are good the first time around, but 13 sets of series of 3 epidurals really doesn't get it for anybody, because usually with an epidural, in my experience, I've done 5,000 of them since 1981, is that if the first shot works, you don't need the second one. And if the first shot doesn't, it's highly unlikely that the second one will. So the interventionalists not only are one of the flies in the ointment, but in addition, they are also sending occasionally, but not often, their experts around the country to testify for the feds and some of these doctor trials. And they don't even need to be spoon-fed. They're there for purely economic reasons. If they can sink a doctor on an opioid prescribing case, that's one less guy they got to compete with, because patients, while they might be convinced that a set of shots might be helpful in the first place, after a while they'd certainly rather take a pill than get a needle. I know I would. Now, I was brought up as an injectionist. I was brought up doing every kind of nerve block in the world. Anesthesiologists are pretty good guys in general. You're correct that their background is in the OR, but the fact is that they are experts in pain. But the only problem is that they've been fed this bill of goods that injections are the thing to do, and that after that, if the patient doesn't get better, it's the patient's fault because they can't fail. After all, doctors are immutably an expert in everything, and we know that. So you know what I'm saying. Surgeons are very much like that also. If they have a failed back syndrome, they say it's the patient's fault. But I'm not going to take too much time. I'd actually like to comment on 3 or 4 things you said, but that's for another time. I'd like to touch bases with you after the show's over, so maybe you can look me up. I'm pretty well known. It's William Mangino II, MD. I've been advocating for chronic pain patients. I did 8.5 years in prison. I'm currently on parole. The Pennsylvania Attorney General hates me. The DEA had my case. They dropped it because they couldn't make the case because they don't have any criminal evidence of prescribing. It's all hearsay things like, gee, you had 11 cars in the parking lot. You must be a bad guy. So I don't want to go into all that now, but I'm with you 100%. I might not agree with everything you say, but I think your heart's in the right place. And if there's anything I can do for you, just let me know.
Well, I'm your partner, man. Thank you for calling.
Well, yeah, okay, and it's an excellent show. Actually, I called in to listen, but I was compelled to say something about your statement, and you're right. Okay, thank you. I'm going to keep listening. Don't cut me off. My computer's dead, so I need...
We'll just mute you. We'll mute you. All right, thank you.
Thanks.
All righty. We have one more caller.
Wow.
Caller, did you want to say anything? Would you like to respond quickly before we take the other call?
I sure do. I'm sitting here. I'm just touched, moved, and inspired by that. I've seen Dr. Mangino's case. I've followed it on Doctors of Courage and Linda Cheek's website.
Yep.
And I'm completely moved by that generous interpretation of a simple urgent care doctor in Montana just trying to do the right thing. And I'm promising all y'all that I'm going to follow up with Dr. Mangino and learn as much as I can.
I have his information. I'll give it to you after the show. So.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, would you like to take another call?
Absolutely.
All right. Caller from area code 210. What's your name and where are you from?
Yeah, my name's John Alexander. I'm from San Antonio, Texas. Hi, Janelle.
Hi, John. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. And hello, doctor.
Hi, John.
Hi. I have an extensive background in medical field. I was a registered respiratory therapist for 30 years, worked in ERs, worked in ORs. And, you know, I just want to say as caregivers, as you well know, most of us are in that business because of the level of compassion and what we feel for life and for people. And
Truly.
That's why we do it. And I know that that's why you do it. So my question is, do you feel like the lawmakers, the policymakers, whoever's in charge of all this, BS on opioid crisis, do you feel that they want you to take responsibility or feel responsible when one of your patients takes their own life?
Yes, I do, if they take their own life with pills that I prescribed. That's what happened with Dr. Christensen. A couple of people had high doses of opiates, and they basically took all of them and died, and Dr. Christensen's going to prison for it. It's
right.
Ironic, I think, that we don't charge car dealers if they sell a car to someone who might crash it into somebody else. And we don't charge gun dealers if their gun kills somebody. But suddenly there's this popular thing to charge doctors with writing a prescription for somebody who abuses it, misuses it, or overuses it. So I think that is a dilemma, and all doctors are keen on this idea that there's no protection for doctors at all. No regulatory or legal or tort protection for any doctor who prescribes something to a patient. Now, I have an idea about how to counter that. If we put a marker on every pill, you can do, fingerprints help people solve crimes. Bullet rifling patterns help people solve crimes. Why don't we put a marker on every manufactured pill? And that marker could be assessed in anybody who's died from that pill. And then you could track back whether that person got that pill from their doctor and whether they used it appropriately and whether the number of pills were too many and whether it was used appropriately. And if the doctor wrote the wrong prescription for the wrong patient, like they were allergic to it or something, then maybe the doctor should have some accountability for that. If I prescribe 100 units of insulin to somebody and they only need 10 and they have an insulin reaction and they die from their blood sugar of 5 and their brain goes dead, I would be accountable for that. So I'm willing to be accountable for my mistakes. I am not willing to be accountable for the mistakes that are made by people who are either lying or stupid. And you can't cure stupid. I've been an emergency doctor for 35 years. That's one of our things. But you can also not harden your heart against people who keep doing people-y things. And if you can't love people the way they are and the way they're not, you don't belong in medicine in the first place. And I think what happens is we harden our hearts against people who are desperate, and they come to us because they don't know what else to do. And yes, they've mismanaged their health, or they've done this mistake or that mistake, or they jumped off a roof when they were 18 and testosterone crazed, and they broke their back and they're suffering from it now. And or that's the same logic as not transplanting a liver on someone who's an alcoholic. It's you have to realize that people do irresponsible things, and
that's right.
We cannot categorize them as worthy or not worthy. Every patient is worthy, and every patient can lie to you and get pills from you, and it might take a few visits to sort out who's lying. I mean, who knows who's lying on the first visit, but by the seventh visit, I think you can figure it out if you pay attention and if you have more than 5 minutes to spend with a patient. So thank you, and thank you for helping people breathe.
Well, I just want to say that the reason I asked the question in the first place is because something you said earlier in the broadcast really got to me. Is when you were, I'll paraphrase, basically you were saying that your license and everything on the line. You were put in a position basically where it's either you as a doctor are going to go to jail or prison for the rest of your life, or you will pull the prescriptions from the patients. And I think what you said was something like, at least they didn't die on my pill, which I think is an unfortunate, very unfortunate position that the lawmakers have put all the doctors in.
Yep. And I weep every day for even having those emotions.
Yeah.
I'm sad when patients die, whether it's cancer that kills them or a gunshot wound or some overdose, but it's horrible. But man, when they're dead, and it's like, let's prevent.
That's right.
We campaign all the time about suicide prevention, and here is a category of suicide prevention where we could actually prevent some suicides. There's not that many suicides that are preventable, but these suicides, God damn it, they're preventable. We could prevent these.
Right.
And we're not.
Well, I just, before I go, I just want to commend you and Dr. Klein and Janelle Elgaway for the work that you're doing. Keep it up. I know it's from your heart. Thank you.
Thanks, John. Thank you. I appreciate it. And I just wanted to say, I know there's a few people that dropped off. I apologize we didn't get to you quick enough, but if you'd like to call back in, we would be happy to take your call. So, Dr. Isben, I wanted to ask you, so what now as a doctor, what do you use as alternatives? Do you use CBD oil and cannabis?
Yes, Montana had a cannabis program come into force. Was voted in by the in the state by an initiative process in 2004. It sort of smoldered along in maybe 1,000 patients. After 2008, there was a memo from the Attorney General's office that said that they wouldn't prosecute states where cannabis was legal in a medical way. So the medical program in Montana went wild. And then the state legislature decided that was too much, and they tried to eliminate it. And then they crippled it, and it was just a horrible nightmare for about 5 years. And finally, a year in 2016, a new law was enacted by initiative again. So our state citizens voted it in twice. I didn't have much experience with cannabis as a physician, and then suddenly people started coming to me, and they started telling me miraculous stories about the results that they've gotten with cannabis. And in fact, 80% of my opiate patients have gotten off opiates with cannabis. Not that opiates are bad, but that there's everybody who's on opiates is heading for a cliff. And I was very interested in helping them turn the wagon before they go over the cliff. And fortunately, a lot of my patients took that offer up. But there's lots of other things we can do for relieving pain. We can take herbs that are anti-inflammatory, or I mentioned kratom earlier. And could you talk a little bit more about kratom? Because I know a lot of people listening in are interested in it. They just don't know a lot about it. Well, I don't either. Oh, you don't? So, okay. All right. I know that people use it. I've never used it myself. I've never been trained in how to prescribe it. And so I say to people who ask me about kratom, I go, investigate it, just like you would cannabis or wild lettuce, another thing that's used. Or some people in Great Falls, my friend Rianne, uses poppy seed tea. And she blends these poppy seeds into a drink, and she gets some relief. Not as much as when she was stable on medications. But she's still alive, and she's able to participate. She's closed her accounting business because she can't function. But the poppy seed tea is keeping her alive. I don't know if you saw the video that I put on Facebook. It had 80,000 views with my patient Shannon Croson, and she's been taking kratom, and my friend Melody helped her with that. So I'm hearing about great results from kratom from people who have been desperate for it. It's also, of course, facing a nightmare of categorization as a Schedule I drug on the FDA thing, and I'm sure that has to do with pharmaceutical attack. And it is, sort of thing. Well, and they're also, I know any of the kratom sites or cannabis sites on like YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, they're being taken down, and it's just really crazy how they're criminalizing this. I mean, they're plants, for crying out loud. I mean, there's more side effects from regular medications than you'll get from these. I wish that they would at least test it and do some research on it before they, go in and demonize it all. But yes, it's very sad. It's very sad, and unfortunately, the thing that happens when you make something illegal is you create a prohibition, and when you create a prohibition, you create a black market, and then there's no regulation. And when alcohol was black market, people died from bad alcohol. You have a bad distillery, or you create methanol instead of ethanol, and people go blind. That's where the term blind drunk comes from. There was a lot of toxic stuff that happened for people that were buying bootleg liquor. And we finally decided, it doesn't make any sense to prohibit substances. Then we can't regulate them and make them safe. And human beings are reliable to use something to change their state. And it's either sex. In my case, it's cookies. And it might be beer. It might be cigarettes. It might be pot. It might be sunshine. Or I've been an athlete all my life and addicted to exercise. Everybody's, anybody who says that they're better than an addict doesn't know what they're addicted to, and they're lying.
Yes. I completely agree with you. I just want to take a few of these calls because they've called in a few times and dropped, so I apologize about that.
Good.
Caller from area code 601. What is your name and where are you from?
Hello, Janelle. How are you?
Good. How are you?
It's Kevin Mooney. How's everything going?
Oh, okay. Hi, Kevin. What's your question?
Hi. I just wanted to touch base with Dr. Ibsen. Thank you, Janelle, for what you did in Washington. Dr. Ibsen, very sorry about the loss of one of your patients, but I was just going to say, here in my state, I guess I could say Mississippi, my pain doctor, he had that with him for a little while about that requirement of the epidural, and but yeah, so I think me and him kind of, I had a little, because I'd already had several before I came to him. So me and him kind of had an unspoken understanding that was basically BS. so he doesn't really push that anymore. He lets you, if you think that you want to get one, he'll give you one. But he told me straight up when I first came, he said, "Oh no, you have to get one because if you don't get those, well." And I understand where he's coming from. He was saying that it looked bad on him, that it's like you're just coming to get the. But here's my thing with it: even if the FDA says they're not approved, and they know that they're causing harm, why do they continue to put the doctors in the position to have to tell them you have to get these or I can't give you pain medication? And by the way, I had reduced with mine. He reduced mine for a whole year, an entire year. And he said due to the CDC guidelines. But then, and it really disrupted my life. I just got married again to a beautiful, wonderful lady in the Philippines. So that requires me to travel. Thank you. For now, it requires me to travel because of our circumstance. But I was a widow, and I was starting my life again. And right when I got married, just before I left, he cut me off my baseline medicine and left me with only breakthrough. Left me that way for a year, and I couldn't go back to see her. Finally, he gave me back half of my baseline of what he was giving me before. So, for some reason, here in Mississippi, we're getting a little bit of understanding. Not a lot, but some. I mean, we have a few that have been, there's been a couple that have, went in the tank for overprescribing, and I don't know why. I'm sure but I know one I had formerly a few years ago before, they accused him of trading shrimp for prescriptions, and I know the man didn't do that. He had more class than that as a doctor. So it's, God, it's just really something, man. I mean, really, the man makes good money. He had a farm in Thailand. I mean, why would he trade a prescription for Xanax for some shrimp? I mean, that's just silly. It doesn't make any sense. But that's what he accused. That's what they accused him of.
I want to thank you for being for being persistent with your doctor and for your willingness to be understanding. And I got to say that the CDC guidelines do not call for any of these weanings. The CDC guidelines, even though we knew when they came out that they were done in a shady way, and that the CDC had never taken on pain before, and that the FDA has always regulated pain medicine, and that the attempt by Dr. Kolodny to use his colleague, Dr. Frieden, who was head of the CDC at the time, all of that was hinky and criminal, and the CDC has been hijacked. When you read the guidelines themselves, they do not call for anybody to be weaned. They're guidelines that are written, like Janelle said, for family doctors who are starting people on pain management. And it's like, you shouldn't start people on high doses of opiates. All the patients I took care of were already started by somebody else. Why am I cleaning up this mess? And the answer to that is I'm quite happy to, because these people are suffering and a mess happened. But I consider it a responsibility of the medical profession itself to face facts, grow a pair, and say, we put people on pain medicines for 15 years, and we must not suddenly abandon them. And we should do the research to develop some science behind how we treat pain, instead of a religious fervor or a tendency to have an inquisition. This is like the middle fucking ages, and I can't stand it. I'm trained in science, and so are my colleagues, and I can't understand how they can behave in this way.
Yes, absolutely. Kevin, thank you for calling in. I appreciate your question. We have one more caller from area code 847. What is your name and where are you from?
Hi. Hi. Thank you so much for taking the call. Doctor, thank you for everything that you've said tonight. It's been a great show, and it's very interesting to see it from the doctor's perspective. I was wondering, well, first off, I wanted to thank you for what you said about that we need to be talking about suicide, because it's something for years I've kind of tried to advocate for people to discuss it, talk about it, because it's very real with any of us that are in pain. And I just wanted to thank you for that. Also, could you talk a little more about why you think it's important for people to be like videotaping experiences that they are having right now with doctors in ERs and pain management and that?
Yeah, I'm happy to. I've had so much difficulty with my patients who are trying to get prescriptions filled that I started to coach them on recording their interactions, because it seems quite arbitrary how different pharmacists will behave based on which doctor has written the prescription. For example, I saw a patient who'd been dropped by his doctor. His prescriptions had been filled by the hospital pharmacy for years. He came to see me. I wrote him the very same prescription that the other doctor wrote. Nothing changed. 5 years stable. He took that prescription into that pharmacy, and they refused to fill it. And it's the same pills that they've been giving that person for 5 years. So I started asking my patients to start filming. And, of course, I had to get interested in filming in order to help train them how to do that. So I've done a lot of filming of my patients. I take for some patients who want to be anonymous, I take a picture of their feet while I'm recording them. Other times we do selfies. We're just doing a lot of video because that's the country we live in. And you know, emotionally speaking, telling a story no longer works for communicating a dilemma. You can write a very poignant paragraph and people will scroll right by it. And you show them a video and, oh my God, oh, that's what he means. And, you know, I have a couple videos on Facebook that are like that, and they're extremely poignant. And the more you show people that you're watching them and that you're documenting, then they can no longer deny that, well, that wasn't said that way. Well, no, actually, it's no longer he said, she said. It's more like he said, she said, and the video confirms that this is what happened. And when people are afraid, they're going to lie to get out of their predicament because they know they're lying to you. They know it's a lie that they can't give you pain medications, or they know it's a lie that you're going to lie there for 4 hours without any pain medicines while you're writhing with a kidney stone because they think you're drug seeking. And you've got to document that stuff so that people no longer can be prejudiced against patients. And that when you shame people into saying, you treated these people like this, you don't deserve to have a license. You don't deserve to have your hospital opened. You don't deserve to be a doctor anymore. That's when we're going to start changing this thing. Yeah. You know, the civil rights process changed when there was a picture of police officers attacking black people with dogs. And one picture of this dog lunging at this person in a conflict changed everything. in the civil rights movement, that and Dr. King and all that sort of thing. But basically, it's documentation, and it's people standing up for themselves. But in this environment, if you haven't got a video, it didn't happen. So keep practicing with your video.
I didn't get her name, but thank you for calling in. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
We're gonna start wrapping up here a little bit, but I just wanted to know, is there anything that you really wanted to cover that we haven't gotten to touch on yet?
Yeah, thank you. I was at the funeral of Jennifer Adams today, and I just wept the whole time. And it was a poignant and beautiful thing, and I had several insights for myself. The number one incredible thing that happened today is I spoke to Jennifer's mother, who's probably 65 years old or so, close to my age, and she thanked me. And I thought, oh, my God, that's so gracious of you. Thanking me for what? She said, Dr. Isben, I saw you 15 years ago in the emergency department. You picked up a cancer in my uterus. I got it removed 2 days later, and I've never thanked you for that. And since you saved my life, I want you to know that I'm alive today so that I can take care of my daughter's son, my grandson, because my daughter died from pain.
Wow.
And I was just moved by that. And I'm also moved by the courage it took her to last 41 years, and the whatever it took for her to say, I'm getting out of this pain. And I used to think that suicide is a permanent solution to a temporary problem, and I think we still have to keep talking about it. And it's terrible that it happened and that it had to happen, but it was also her right to stop suffering. And I've got to forgive that. I've got to let that go. And I've got to let go of the other patients that I say, the patients I've lost. I haven't lost them. The patients that have been lost to their family, and the patients that have suffered so much that they just didn't want their families to suffer anymore. And I think that's motivating me to continue in this conversation and to continue to advocate for, let's just prevent these suicides. Let's treat people humanely. Let's treat them as well as we would our pets.
Yes.
And that's all I have to say about that.
I wanted to ask you something because I forgot about this too. So the cannabis, when we were speaking off air, you were talking about when something like this becomes institutionalized. It has with, I don't know if it's with the cannabis yet, but it's going to be there. And then, what happened with opioids. Can you talk about this a little bit? Like, what problems will occur if CBD and kratom become institutionalized or, within pharmacology?
Well, I think pharmaceutical companies do great things.
Yes.
So do surgeons. So do anesthesiology and pain management people. They all do great things. It's just that if we apply one tool repeatedly, then it's like the parable about if everything, if your only tool is a hammer, everything looks like a nail. And every patient needs a disciplinary approach to their pain or to any of their healthcare issues. So when things get locked up into tight structures, we do have to regulate things to make sure that they're safe. But my concern is if you take kratom and put it on Schedule 1 and make it unavailable to anybody, that's going to drive it into a black market. If you do the same thing with cannabis, I mean, Kevin's from Mississippi. There's no legal cannabis there, although the feds are growing cannabis at the University of Mississippi and not making it available for research. So, I mean, the ironies of all these things is just crazy. And I think what's happening in our culture is we get into one camp or another, and then we're locked in with extreme ways of thinking. And I guess we demonize our opponents, and we say extreme kind of language. And I think what the patients are asking for and what patients need is they just need to sit down with a doctor who's going to listen to them and help problem solve. And in fact, my patients who bring their problems solution to me, that's much more effective than the placebo effect. The placebo effect is about 30% effective. If you give somebody a sugar pill, there's a 30% chance they'll get better. But if my patient comes to me and say, Doc, this is what I really want to do, I am certain that this is going to turn things around for me. If it's not going to kill them, I'm going to say yes, because they're going to have an 80% response to that. And that's what I noticed in my cannabis patients. The ones that come back to me for another cannabis card, they're saying, hey, this is working for me. This is so much better than what I was on. Therefore, because the patient likes to be right, just like doctors like to be right, if it's the patient's idea, oh, my God, that is so powerful. And empowerment is what we need. We're not having empowerment going on with our patients. We're having a mother may I, daddy may I situation. We're infantilizing patients and putting them in the situation where they have to beg for their pills and pee in a cup and pray to God that they don't find out that they smoked a joint 2 weeks ago. I mean, the fear is crazy, and fear creates more fear. Anxiety creates more anxiety, and neither of those are any good for anybody's health.
Right, and that all creates more pain, you know. So
exactly.
I absolutely agree with you. We have a question off of YouTube. Does Dr. Isben have a Twitter account? And if so, what is it?
I don't.
Oh, you don't? Okay. Well, he doesn't. He's on Facebook, though.
No. Dr. Klein and I have agreed he's not on Facebook, I'm not on Twitter.
So
we're covering it that way.
There you go. That's smart. Well, Dr. Isben, I really enjoyed having you on, and I would hope that you would want to come back sometime because, I only got through half of my questions.
Yeah, anytime.
Well, we are filled up next week, but I would like you to come on, whenever you're available next, or, maybe even have your own show, because I'm sure you could do a lot if you wanted to. I don't know if you have the time, but we'd love to.
I don't have the energy. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll talk about it coming up, but
I'm happy to come
again.
back.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, and I hope you have a great night. And Call Nation, I just want to say thank you so much for tuning in. Wonderful questions. You guys are amazing, as always. Next week, Tuesday, we'll have Dr. Klein back on, as he always is on. And Wednesday, we are having Paulette Wright come on. She is a former RN. She is trying to get back into her RN, and she is a CPP as well. If you saw the video of the briefing in D.C., she was sitting right next to Dr. Klein. She spoke up at the end. So she's going to come on and share her story and what she's been through and what she's done. So hope you'll join us back again next week, and I hope you have a great night and have a good evening, Call Nation.
Listening to Conspiracies Against Wellness with your host, Janelle Elgaway. The opinions expressed on this program are those of the hosts and callers, and not necessarily those of EXG LLC, its employees, or sponsors. Copyright 2018 by EXG LLC. All rights reserved.